Hello, I'm Drew Shade. I'm here with Broadway Black, and we're sitting with the incomparable Paul Tazewell for a new series we're calling Black and Blue. We're at the Civilian Hotel in the Blue Room. As you can see, it's an amazing curated room, if you will. It's an amazing curated room by David Rockwell, co-curated with Paul Tazewell. There's some awesome artifacts. I shouldn't say artifacts. Artifacts are not a,
They are kind of artifacts.
you know?
Yeah, definitely. It was wonderful to be invited to help to curate with David some of the pieces. Some that are very near and dear to my heart, and then some that I'd never seen before.
But yeah. So the Blue Room is filled with pieces from Broadway. We have Dear Evan Hansen here, Kinky Boots, as well as Wicked and Phantom of the Opera, Harry Potter, Hamilton. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about how you went about curating or helping to curate this room with David Rockwell.
What they asked was of David and his team was just to reach out to designers and producers, to access some of the those props and identifiable costume pieces, other things that audiences have seen used within the production, but not necessarily have seen them up close.
Yeah.
So it provides basically a backdrop to anyone coming into the lounge, and the lounge is conveniently located next to the bar that is part of the Civilian. So it's just a nice place to gather and relax, and in the meantime, engage with some of Broadway.
A lot of Broadway, actually. There's a lot of pieces here that you just look at and like, wow, how did they get this? Did you have to go in and ask individual artists for these pieces, and what was that process like?
Because my colleagues, many of my colleagues are designers, or that have done design shows on Broadway. I was calling out to them and saying, do you happen to have a sketch for this, or some representation of your work on X production, whatever that might be. So I reached out to Greg Barnes. I reached out to Susan Hilferty on Wicked. There were with Lion King. We reached out to Disney directly. So we were able to acquire a number of really stunning pieces. And then some things that are beautiful pieces to see, like the Lady Bracknell hats from The Importance of Being Earnest that Desmond Healy designed a few years ago, and they're all representative of productions that were either acclaimed or had been nominated for a Tony.
Wonderful.
So with that, I think that each of them provides its own story.
Definitely so. I mean, just looking at the pieces and the detail, it draws you in. Can you talk to a little bit about, you have some amazing friends, obviously. How did you start this career of being a designer? You're from North Carolina. Can you talk about your humble beginnings?
For sure. I mean, I grew up in Akron, Ohio. I was one of four
Excuse
sons.
me, you went to school in North Carolina.
I went to school
at
University of North Carolina School of the Arts. And that was a little bit later, but I started to, I was bitten by the theater bug when I was in junior high and high school in Akron, Ohio, and started as a performer. But at the same time, I was, I loved clothes. I knew how to sew. I was taught how to sew very early, and so I was making costumes for the same productions that I was in. So when I then matured and was looking for schools, by then I had fallen in love with New York, and I decided that's where I want to be, but I want to be performing. And so I went to Pratt Institute and I majored in fashion design. And I was here for a year and went through a major culture shock and then decided to transfer to University of North Carolina School of the Arts. And I majored in costume design because that was really what I wanted to do. And so after 3 years completing my undergrad schooling, I then entered into the graduate program at Tisch School of the Arts in New York City, and completed that and started designing. I was very fortunate to be designing professionally the year after I graduated, and that was because I met Tazewell Thompson, who is not he's not a relative. We just happen to share a name, but he had invited me to the Arena Stage in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time, my earlier career years of my career I was developing in the regional circuit, so Tazewell at that time was doing a lot of productions, but you kind of dotted around, and because we connected, he liked my work. He invited me to join him on different productions. We did a production of Caucasian Chalk Circle at the Arena Stage as well. I think that George C. Wolfe might have seen that production or some other productions that I did while I was the resident costume designer at the Arena Stage. And that was when George and I started working together. George invited me to do a production called Blade to the Heat. It was a play that he was directing, and that was at the Public Theater, and he was the artistic director at that time there.
You really just took off. Like it just sort of just happened and the ball started rolling.
It was, it was a time when, there were very few designers, black designers of color working, that really had found the profession of costume design or, theater design as an outlet, and, like Tony Leslie James, is a huge, she's an amazing colleague, and she worked with George a lot. So we were two of very few designers of color at that time.
Did you know when you were working on Hamilton that it was going to be as big as it was? I mean, it was the new Rent of the era. Rent was a crazy phenomenon. There were fans everywhere. It was, lines down the door, and Hamilton sort of recreated that sort of mania of musical theater. When you were working on that project at the Public, which I did see off Broadway, it was the hottest ticket to get. Did you know it was going to be all of that? You were nominated for a Tony 6 times before then, and had yet to win at that point. But this sort of just catapulted into a new era. And you had worked with Lynn on In the Heights previously. Did you know that this was going to be what it was, and that the costuming was going to be so integral to the piece itself?
I didn't. I knew that, and I was with the production from the workshop phase all the way through the Public and then on to Broadway. When I was first introduced to the text, I connected to it, but it was difficult to understand how the music was going to play such a huge role, and how it is completely sung through, and then also just to really understand the poetry that that point of view that Lynn had. I saw I had the fortune of seeing a reading. It wasn't staged, but it was a reading of all of the actors. Some that continued on with the production, and some that were that they ended up recasting. But to hear it live was life-changing, and my connection to it, it just pulled my heart out. I mean, it really was a beautiful experience, and I knew then that I was falling in love with the piece. I didn't know what the response was going to be from an audience, and I've been I designed Carolina Change, love in that same way. I love what it says. It was,
it's my favorite musical of all time.
Oh my gosh,
Carolina Change is my absolute favorite. The original with Tanya Pinkins, Ben Platt at a young age.
Yes.
How did you design those costumes for a washing machine and a moon and a
that was
a
working
dryer?
with George. It was working with George, and that was where, you're speaking of. Or, and I was, giving you a little of my insight of, working with the same person again over a period of time. That was me and George coming together in a way that was different, and I think that there was a great trust that I had gained from George, and then for myself, I felt very comfortable with him, with how I present images, with having that conversation, which is where you need to get to. And it was the two of us finding these images together, and George being clear that he didn't want for it to be, he was not going to dress the washing machine up in, a box that had a door on it. It's not, it wasn't going to be that kind of representation.
Yeah. You are the costume designer on West Side Story, and you're Oscar nominated for the first time, and you're the first Black man to be nominated for an Oscar for costume design. This is someone else has designed this work previously before, and you're sort of interpreting this new Steven Spielberg film. What was it like? Did you use any influences from the previous movie, or did you stay away from those aspects? How did you go about costuming West Side Story?
Well, West Side Story has been in my life since I've been connected to theater. I mean, in junior high, I was in a production of it, and I also worked on the costume team, the crew. I played Officer Krupke, which is it's funny to think about.
Right.
So when, come full circle and I'm being asked to design the film at the same level, and, it's daunting to think about, okay, well, how am I going to design this so that it has the same impact for audiences, for modern audiences.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg, when he asked me to do it, he said that it was very important for it to be set in the same year that the original Broadway musical was set, which is 1957. Grappling with, the original costume designer is Irene Sheriff, and her work is incredible.
Yeah.
And a huge body of work for musicals. She designed Hello, Dolly, I believe, with Barbra Streisand. I'll get them wrong, so I won't rattle off the others that she's designed. But she's so much a part of our the overall film costume world, Hollywood world. So many people have asked me about the purple dress that she designed for Anita.
Yeah.
And how how do you redesign that? How do you redesign a dress that is so iconic?
Yeah.
I was taking in everything that production was, that film was, and I then needed to set that aside. As I was working with Steven, as we were looking at images, as I was listening to what he was saying to me, his interest was to have the film feel more realistic, than the original film.
Yeah.
Be very reflective of New York City in the 1950s. Have a grit, and within that grit and texture, a beauty. So and also how we were representing the Latinx community, and the brown and black faces of New York City at that time. So that gave me more direction for how I'm going to approach the story of West Side Story.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, I set that original film aside, I honored it, but set it aside, and went about designing as I interpret, as I see, as Paul Tazewell sees that world, sees West Side Story, and make choices that I feel I made choices that I feel audiences would connect to, and would be inspired by, thinking about the America dress for Anita, and everybody's waiting for the America dress for Anita. I went to, knowing Ariana, and this is, kind of pulling all this together. Because you've worked with her in
Hamilton and Donna, and so you've worked with her multiple times. And to see her in this capacity, did you know exactly what you were going to do when you knew it was her?
I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew what she brought to the event.
Gotcha.
I knew the professional that she was. I knew what she could do with her body and what she looks like, and what would set her off. And so I, as I was imagining what I would dress her in, I was always seeing her. and making choices about color, making choices about silhouette that would showcase her, really. And then accidentally feel kind of like the original, but not be a recreation of what the original was. And and that's the balance of when I'm designing, when I'm creating that is, I don't want to disappoint an audience because they're coming to the event knowing the original production or knowing the original film. And I want to fill all those moments with new images.
Yeah.
So hopefully we did a good job.
Are you excited for Oscar night? Are you excited
I'm beside myself. Yeah.
Like, does it feel real?
No, I mean, awards, events they're tricky, they're, because, again, you're like, okay, well, I'm being, I mean, that's the height of judgment, it's like there has to be a winner.
Yeah.
And I'm just, I feel so honored to be in the group that I'm in the circle of designers that I'm being seen within. That's really enough. And quite honestly, to have been asked to design West Side Story by Steven Spielberg and have it be the popular film that it is, and to have gained the notice of audiences for my work and embraced for my work, that's that is beautiful.
Yeah.
And that is enough.
Yeah. Can you talk to me a little about any projects that you have not been announced yet? Will you be doing the Color Purple film?
You
did the original Color Purple musical.
I did.
Fantasia's doing this too.
I
Can
know,
you tell us?
No, as far as I know, I'm not designing that film. Yeah.
Okay. I really was hoping.
But you never know. You never know how things turn out.
Yeah. Well, we thank you for the luxury that you do have sharing this time with us. It's been amazing and insightful. I appreciate you so much. We've been sitting with the great Paul Tazewell for our new series called Black and Blue at the Blue Room in the Civilian Hotel. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching with us, and we'll have more with Mr. Tazewell at a later time after you've won the Oscar.
Oh,
right?
Let's hope so.
Look, no, we're claiming it right now. We're claiming it.
Okay,
Thank you so much. Awesome.